Lovers of lore, thank you for joining me for the fourth part of the March of the Machine Magic the Gathering storyline. In this part, we are going all over the place, but we're going to start out with Tyvar. He has headed home to Skemfar, right? And that's located on Kaldheim. His return there was met with screams of horror and the clash of battle. And off in the distance, Tyvar could see that the precious world tree had a massive white Phyrexian serpent coiled around it, crushing in on it. And from its body, waves of Phyrexians were raining down on Kaldheim. Tyvar takes a deep breath of the air of his homeland and surges forward to bring battle to the enemy. He ducked the scythe blade of a Phyrexian, and turning his arm to metal, Tyvar caved its skull in with a single blow. Cheering went up around him. This was the end of Kaldheim, and the elves here would meet it with valiant ferocity. Tyvar encountered King Harold, who said, "Are you here for the dregs? There's plenty," with a broad grin on his face. Harold then went on to ask if Tyvar knew what these monstrosities were, and Tyvar spat back, "Phyrexians." At the same time this is happening, a Phyrexian giant lobs a boulder at them, and Tyvar pulverizes it in midair with a single punch. He then goes on to explain the corrupting power of Phyrexian oil. They are an enemy we cannot best alone. It clearly pained Tyvar's pride to make that admission. Things then get crazier as the ground starts to tear open and white light is blazing upwards from the rents in the ground. It was a doom scar, the melding of multiple realms. Phyrexians and elves started to plummet into these cracks and were swallowed by the cosmos. And then water started rising up from the cracks and they widened. Tyvar leaps into action, using his magic to pull together a stable platform for the elves to ride out the chaos. But he can barely keep it together. And as this is happening, longboats start to appear in the water. The occupants of the longboats are omen speakers. They call out, "It is the end of all things." Will the elves join the fight? King Harold's proud response rung out, "Join it? We will lead it." "On to the ships," he bellowed. While this is happening, Tyvar is straining against the Doomscar. The elves are racing aboard the longships. Tyvar is the last to leap aboard as the platform he was holding together gives way. Looking around, it seemed to him that the entirety of Kaldheim was there. Dwarves, humans, undead warriors, ghostly heroes, trolls, fire giants, and more banded together to face the Phyrexian threat. This was true unity, and Tyvar was rightly impressed. Harold made bold proclamations while the longships retreated back into the cosmos. Loping spirit beasts, wolves, bears, and even a squirrel with a long flat tail ran alongside the longships through the cosmos. When the light of the cosmos faded from Tyvar's eyes, he was in front of the corrupted world tree Realmbreaker. The longships themselves were bound in the air by some unseen sorcery, and they found themselves surrounded by flights of Valkyries lending their aid. The Valkyries fired arrows of purest divinity, but there were still countless Phyrexians. Hundreds of thousands of them dotted the landscape and scurried across the horrific tree. Tyvar's tattoo started to tingle. The feeling of the great serpent Coma. The elves revered it. Something was wrong, though. Coma had changed. A part of the cosmos had been corrupted. This avatar of Coma was a nightmare. Eyeless with a bone-ridged mouth, it was distinctly Phyrexian. Tyvar looked down at the horror reaching up towards them. He was unaccustomed to feeling fear. But shaking it off, Tyvar stepped up to the edge of the longship, and with a mighty battle cry, he leapt from the ship, plummeting gloriously towards what would surely be his heroic end. The story then pivots to Caledon Dash, and we're following Saheeli and Pia Nalar, who is the mother of Chandra. They're trying to thwart the Phyrexian invasion in their own way. Sahili had enacted something called Operation Golden Scales to keep the streets safe, and most citizens had already been evacuated from Girapur. They had equipped powerful experimental weaponry onto their airships. They were fortunate that they had been given some omens that warned of the Phyrexian invasion. So they had almost a week of preparation done when the portals appeared in the sky and Realmbreaker's roots crashed into Caledon Dash. Its branches reached out and crushed the biggest airships, including their flagship that had their most powerful weaponry. It was a massive blow. The remaining smaller airships were able to avoid Realmbreaker's branches, and they fired their weaponry, causing bits of Phyrexians to rain from the sky. The goal of the Phyrexians was immediately clear. They were keen to claim the power of the Aetherflux reservoir. Sahili and Pia are given aid by some renegades, led by a man named Baji. Things end up going south, and the airship Baji and Pia are in gets attacked. Baji is impaled directly into his seat, with Pia frantically trying to control the airship, but she can't manage to get into the driver's seat as the airship starts nosediving towards the ground. After that, this part of the story switches over to following Atraxa, and she is on New Capenna, wrapped with holy fervor. She's there to wipe out these sinners against Phyrexia, and she can see on the rooftops of the city frail, foolish mortals who oppose Phyrexia. And with a single thought, she sends swarms of servitors who strip the flesh from the wretches, leaving only clattering bones. There will be no mercy for the residents of Capenna. No completion. Flesh will always yield. It took almost no time for the maestros to ally themselves with Phyrexia and embrace completion. And as a result, Atraxa can actually feel their collective minds and their obsession with beauty, because the maestros were about all different forms of beauty: music, art, food, flowers. Even now, with their new completed forms, their mind gaped with wonder, describing themselves as beautiful. The word felt alien to Atraxa. Beauty was a forgotten concept, nothing compared to the glory of Phyrexia. Trying to learn a little bit more, she focuses on this concept of beauty and realizes that it's tied to a particular museum in the city. This is the maestro's headquarters. So she heads there and finds it filled with ancient statues and other relics that these maestros find to be beautiful. When she arrives, she starts to lay waste to the paintings and the statues, and she can feel the collective pain of the maestros in her mind as she destroys it, but she waves that away, saying, as they embrace Phyrexia fully, these things will no longer matter. So Atraxa carved a path of destruction until she reached the room that held carvings and statues of Phyrexians. This served to enrage her even further. These were the Phyrexians that were too weak to serve properly. This was an abomination. So she redoubles her efforts at this point, obliterating the museum, but she's stilled momentarily when she finally encounters the statues of the angels. And then, without thinking, Atraxa leaps at the statues, beheading all of them. There was something about the angels' faces that drove into her mind. She's smashing these heads over and over until they're turning into smaller pieces and then eventually dust. And while this is happening, hazy white power is flowing out of these statue chunks, and this power is chewing into Atraxa's hard skin. Her nerves were on fire, but she was obsessed. She couldn't stop herself until she had completely pulverized the entirety of all of the angels' heads, and there was nothing left but pure dust. At that point, she regains her composure. Beauty is dead. The story ends with us learning there was a presence watching Atraxa the whole time, and the angelic spirits from the statues ask the presents, "Why did you not stop her?" The response they were given, "It is not yet time." All right, that wraps up this installment of the story. I absolutely loved Tyvar in this part of the story, particularly. If you like what we're doing here, you can support the channel either by joining the channel membership or on Patreon. A big thank you to the channel's members and patrons for supporting this channel. Go enjoy some more magic videos. And remember, lore is life.